What is going on, everybody? Today is going to be Stratocaster Buyer's Guide for Beginners. This is something that comes up quite a bit because Fender's lineup is a lot of guitars. I don't know if you've ever gone to Fender's website, but if you look at Fender.com and then bring up Stratocaster, it's like 133 different Stratocaster models. And so which one should you buy? The Affinity, the Classic Vibe, the who knows what, right? So let's get these all straight. And now anybody could just go to the website and look through the specs and say, and just list all the specs. But I want to do a little more than that. What we want to do is kind of put them in groups and kind of understand what the main differences are between these guitars so that you can make an educated buying decision based on your ability, based on the things you like about guitars, and we'll try to get you in the right direction. Before we do that, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button and the like button if you like guitar stuff, because that's what we do here every day at Dylan Talks Tone. And go to DylanTalksTone.com and buy pickups, because we make pickups for all kinds of guitars. And so that's kind of what our real job is, but we like talking about guitar stuff. So today we're going to focus on the Squier stuff, and we're going to focus on the Made in Mexico stuff, and we're going to focus on the recently released Fender stuff that's made in Indonesia. And what we want to do is kind of understand where all these guitars are in the market so that you can make a good decision. So we may not focus on every little detail about every guitar. That would take too long. So what I want to do is focus on the main differences and the main contributing factors to your decision-making process. So, for example, let's start with the very least expensive guitar in the list, and that is going to be the Debut. Okay, so the Stratocaster Debut, I actually have one of these. You can get them on Amazon. To be honest with you, if you have to buy a guitar off of Amazon, this is a pretty good one. The one I got was great. Basically, what you're looking at is a 6-saddle tremolo guitar. So it basically looks like a Stratocaster, right? And it is a Stratocaster. It's got narrow, tall frets on it. It's got 9.5-inch C-shaped, 9.5-inch radius neck with a C-shaped profile, a 1.650 nut, which is their narrower nut. They use two main sizes, and that's the narrower of the two, which is the first thing I'd like to mention. So if you're a beginner guitar player, you might like that because it'll be an easy playing. And a 9.5-inch radius neck will be an easy, middle-of-the-road, C-shaped, narrow nut. That'll be a very easy neck to play, okay? It's just going to be a Stratocaster-shaped thing that will work pretty well, and it's a very basic just a basic sort of setup. It's a poplar body, which we're going to see that quite a bit on the more inexpensive side because that material is very easy to get for Indonesian guitars, and that's where most of this stuff comes from. So that's why you're going to see that. Moving up to the next thing is going to be the Bullet Stratocaster. Well, what's the difference there? It's basically the same guitar, but it doesn't have a tremolo. So it's a hardtail. So if you don't want to mess around with a tremolo and you just want a hardtail, then the Bullet will be the one for you. Other than that, it's basically the same guitar, except it has, different colors available and stuff like that. But it's more or less the same guitar. The Sonic, the Squier Sonic, is sort of the same, in the same boat as well. But they've done some other modern kind of things with pickup selection and stuff. Of these three guitars, basically what I would tell you is, as far as the materials are concerned, as far as the build quality, where they're made, all that kind of stuff, the Debut, the Bullet, and the Sonic are going to pretty much, they all come with those cast closed back tuners. They're basically going to be more or less the same guitar. Pick your color, pick your style, and more importantly, with the Bullet versus the other two, decide whether you want tremolo or not. Also on the Sonic series, there's a couple other options available with humbuckers and stuff like that. So, but principally, playing wise and your approach to the instrument as far as how big the neck is and stuff, basically gonna all be the same. The Affinity which has been a kind of a beginner staple for quite a long time. The Affinity Stratocaster is going to go now to a 2-point kind of more modern tremolo, which for some people at this stage of the game, I don't know that it matters a whole lot. You can decide whether you like one versus the other. 2 points can be a little easier to adjust and stuff, but I like 6-screw, but of course I'm kind of a vintage nerd about that stuff. So it's either way. One of the other big things about the Affinity is it's going to step up to medium jumbo frets. So they're going to be a little bit bigger fret, okay? So even though the neck profile and the radius and the nut size and stuff is all going to be the same on an Affinity, the neck may feel a little bigger in the hand because the frets are bigger. The other thing is it has, at this point, split shaft tuners, otherwise known as safety posts. So you stick the string down in there and you bend it over and then you wind the string on and you never poke your finger. I actually really like those. Across, I would say these first 4 sort of levels of guitars, they're gonna basically all be about the same quality of hardware, okay? They're probably gonna basically be about the same quality of fretwork, the same quality of finish, that sort of thing. And really between the Debut, the Bullet, the Sonic, and the Affinity, what you're really gonna be choosing is the overall look and style of Stratocasters that you want. Do you want a more vintage looking guitar? Do you want a more modern looking guitar, etc.? Because that will kind of give you an idea in that lower price point. You'll just have that choice. And again, don't forget that the Squier Sonic allows you to have some humbuckers and cool stuff like that, and the Bullet has no tremolo. At least right now, the Bullet only is listed on the Fender website as the HT, which is the hardtail, so it doesn't have a tremolo. We should also say that we're going to kind of skip a lot of the special models, so your Paranormal and a bunch of your artist models and stuff like that, because and some of the special editions, because there aren't very many of them, A, and B, those have very specific things about them that if you like those specific things, then just go get those guitars no matter what the spec. The next guitar up that we want to talk about is going to be the Classic Vibe series. Now the Classic Vibe series is very, very cool because it takes the overall style and overall vibe of each of the decades of guitars, so 50s, 60s, and 70s, and kind of injects them into those instruments with more vintage correct specs, but not totally vintage correct, because they are entry-level instruments still, and we want to make sure that as an entry-level guitar player that you still really enjoy playing that guitar. So there are a couple of features on here that they are going to have that, even though the guitar overall looks pretty vintage, it has a few features that are kind of important. So we're going to talk about that. First of all, most of them are going to be NATO wood, which is like a mahogany-ish sort of alder. It's a weird wood from Asia. It's fine. It's totally fine. It's just wood. In fact, I think that word means wood. I'm pretty sure. You can correct me in the comments if you want, but I'm pretty sure it just means wood. Instead of having true vintage spec necks, they have 9.5-inch radius fretboards, which is super middle of the road, excellent, very easy to play, very welcoming. A C-shaped neck, still that 1.650 nut width, which is kind of the narrower one, but we bump up to good Alnico pickups to start with anyway. You might want to mod them later, but these have Alnico pickups, where all the cheaper guitars we just talked about had ceramic pickups, which is pretty cool. So we're getting Alnico pickups, we're getting narrow tall frets, we're getting a bone nut instead of a plastic nut, which is pretty cool. We're getting some nickel hardware instead of chrome, because we want that vintagey kind of feel to it, which is pretty neat, right? So we're kind of getting some more premium, still an Indonesian or Chinese guitar, but we're still getting some more premium features on those guitars. The 60s guitar is going to be very similar to that. The 70s guitar, you're going to have a poplar body instead of the NATO wood body. So there is that. In all fairness, though, you're probably not going to notice much of a difference in weight or balance or anything, because they kind of figure that stuff out when they select that wood. So it's probably going to just be you're not going to really notice. I think especially with a lot of the painted finishes, all urethane finishes, so even though they're vintage inspired, they're, you know, obviously not going to have nitrocellulose at this price point. So, but with all those finishes, you're not even going to notice what wood it is. One kind of weird one I did want to mention was the Stratosonic, because it's very, very different from all the other Fender offerings. It has an oakum body, which an oakum is sort of a, it's a very inexpensive way to get a mahogany feeling wood. And so the Stratosonic is going to have an oakum body. It's going to have the narrow tall frets, but this is a very Gibson-y guitar, right? It kind of looks Gibson-y, but it's a very Gibson-y guitar because it's got a 24/75 scale and a 12-inch radius fret. So it's a shorter scale, 12-inch radius fretboard, C-shaped neck. This has a graphite nut, which is interesting. And it's a great guitar. I had one before. It's got P90s in it. We've put P90s. I put my P90s in that guitar, and it was really, really fun. Super fun guitar. So we did want to mention that kind of weird one because it's so different that I wanted to make sure that nobody made the mistake of buying that guitar and then have a completely non-Fendery feeling guitar by accident. Next, we want to talk about a bit of a controversial one, and that's going to be the Standard. So this actually has Fender on the peg head, but it's made in Indonesia, and it's called the Fender Standard series. So when you look at the guitar, it just looks like a Strat, right? Basically. Poplar body, medium jumbo frets, 9.5-inch radius fretboard. This has a modern tremolo and modern tuners. It's a very kind of new Strat, right? It's like an Asian new Strat, if that makes sense. It doesn't have all of the vintage appointments. It's got some of the more modern ones, some of the more modern colors. And it also, at this point, we step up to a wider nut. So this is a 1.685, I think, wide nut. So the neck is a little bit more narrow, and it has a modern C radius, which is a little flatter. It just feels a little bit different. I don't know that if you're a real beginner guitar player, you'll feel that much of a difference, but definitely if you have bigger hands, this might be a guitar for you because of the wider nut. They're going to be great guitars. They have medium jumbo frets. They have a micarta nut, which is interesting. A micarta is it's a synthetic material made from laminated paper or fabric, basically. And that might sound bad, like it's soft. It's not. It's hard as a rock. It's hard as bone. But just interesting. I just thought it was neat that it was a micarta nut. Actually, it's very cool. I have a lot of knife handles made out of micarta. Trust me when I say it's not soft. It's very, very hard. You actually can mill it like with a CNC machine. It's very, very hard. I can't even cut it with a laser. So just so you know, that's what that micarta stuff is. In case you see that on the spec sheet and are unsure of it, don't stress about it. Your guitar will be fine and the tone will be awesome. Now this next section of guitars might not necessarily be considered beginner, but we want to mention them because they are still the import guitars by Fender, made in Mexico, and they are kind of the next level. So if you've had any of these past guitars that we just talked about in the past and you kind of want to upgrade, this might be your next move. So let's talk a little bit about the Player 2, the Player Plus, and the Ventura series. So the Ventura series is, let's get that one out of the way first, because that one's still gonna have your 1.650 nut. That one's gonna still have your vintage tall frets. Now this has a soft V fretboard, or neck profile, which is very interesting. It's not totally round like a C. It does have it's not pointed by any means, but it fits the hand just a little bit differently. If you're unsure of it, you might want to put your hands on one because it is a very specific feel. I think it's cool, but it is different. Okay, it just is different enough that you might want to actually put your hands on one before you buy one. I would just recommend that. It also has an alder body at this point. So when we get into the made in Mexico stuff, we're talking about alder bodies, which is like what quote unquote real Stratocasters have, right? Is the alder body. They still have poly finishes. At least the regular ones do. There are some road worn ones and stuff that don't, but all these are going to have poly finishes. Another big thing that might be a deal breaker for people is the Ventera stuff has heel adjust truss rod. So you actually have to loosen the neck to get at the adjustment for the heel, for the truss rod. So if that is a deal breaker for you, you need to know that right now. You don't want to get in that position. The guitars that we've talked about up until this point have it in the peg head, so it's real easy with a wrench. Let's see. Let's talk about the Player Plus series. The Player Plus series is going to be an alder body again. These are cool because they have a satin finish on the neck. A lot of the guitars that we've been talking about up until now have like a shiny finish. I actually like a satin finish on the neck. I think they're cool. The Player Plus also is where we start to get more modern on everything. So the way the guitar feels, the way the body feels against you, the neck profile is going to be a modern C again. It's also going to have a 12-inch radius fretboard, which is much flatter. It's great, but it is definitely flatter than a 9.5. Duh, the number says that. But in practice too, it feels different. The neck might feel a little bigger in your hand because the flatter radius just hits the corners of it feel different. So you might want to know about that. It's a 2-point modern tremolo with blocks, so it's a very modern looking and feeling guitar. The Player Plus has noiseless pickups, actually. The Player Plus has noiseless single coils in it. You may or may not like that. Personally, I'm not a fan. This is a guitar I probably would not buy because I don't like noiseless pickups. The Player 2. The Player 2 is pretty new, right? That's a great guitar. Those things are really good. Alder body. Now these have like an Alnico pickup in them, like it's basically a pretty traditional construction Alnico pickup, Alnico 5. And so not noiseless, not anything weird, but Alnico magnets. 2-point tremolo, medium jumbo frets, 9.5-inch radius, 1.650 nut width. Pretty traditional guitar, but the 2-point tremolo, so pretty modern. So the Player 2 is I think, of all of the made in Mexico stuff, if you don't want to go super vintage, if you just want to get a good guitar, to me the Player 2 is the move. I think that of all the made in Mexico stuff, I think it's the move. I think it has, there isn't any one feature that leans it one way or the other that makes it to where it's like, I like everything, but that kind of sucks. I just feel like it falls right in there. I think the Player 2 is the made in Mexico guitar to get. So there you go. There might be a model or two in here and there that you might say, how come you didn't talk about this model? Well, there's just so many. We could have gone on for hours and hours and hours, and I tried to keep it to kind of the main ones that we think of when we're thinking about, I want to buy a Strat, but I don't know which one to get. Now, let's talk a little bit about quality. Quality depends on a couple of things. One is, the guitar, the manufacturer's reputation as a whole, which overall Fender's pretty good. But more importantly than that, it's going to be the retailer. So if you buy from a reputable retailer with a good return policy, that's going to be important. So if you get a guitar that has problems with it, that has problems other than just setup, you get it and the action is a little high because of the weather, etc., that's different. But if we've got things like really sharp frets, if we've got problems with finishes, if we've got really big problems with the guitars, then just return it and get a new one. Hold your retailer accountable, because that's how we make quality better. When we think about the quality of these instruments, I would put them into just a couple of tiers here. I would say the Debut, the Bullet, the Sonic, and the Affinity are going to kind of be basically about all the same. They're basically about all the same guitar, just some bits and bobs changed around, right? The Classic Vibe, if you're going to buy something, an Asian Fender, Squier, that level of guitar, and I throw the new Standard in there because it's just kind of a fancy Squier, or a modern Squier, I should say, even though it doesn't say Squier on it. To me, on the Asian side of things, the Classic Vibe series, any of them is the way to go. I think that for the value, they're about $550, and for the value, they're incredible. Modern modifications like new pickups and pots and all that kind of stuff fit into those guitars, so you'll never outgrow that guitar. If you wanted to do things to it, keep it, do whatever you want to do to it, do the little mods, go on the forums, learn a bunch of stuff. The classic vibe is the move, and the quality is going to be there. The quality of the other guitars is going to be there too, right? But that guitar is really, to me, the most flexible and the longest. It's going to last the longest. You're not going to outgrow it of any of those instruments. When we talk about the made in Mexico stuff, I already mentioned it, the Player 2, I think, unless you like noiseless pickups. If you like noiseless pickups, get the Player Plus. But if you don't like noiseless pickups and you just want a good guitar, get the Player 2. That's what I would tell you. That would be my thing. The only thing that might move you around between these is if you need to choose one with a skinnier neck with the 1650 nut, you might want to do that, but I wouldn't worry about it a whole lot. I really wouldn't worry about quality, like I said, as long as you get a good guitar. If it's not good, just return it and get another one. That's it. That's how we fix that. But when it comes to, is this guitar better than that guitar? Is this one just as good as that one because this one's cheaper and it has just as much of these things? There is a definite difference in the quality of hardware from Indonesia to Mexico to made in the United States. Keep that in mind. Meaning, if you put a screwdriver on a screw on an Affinity versus a screwdriver on a screw from a made in Mexico guitar, or a screwdriver on a screw from an American guitar, there is going to be definite differences in the quality of the metal itself. Definite differences in the quality of the frets and that sort of thing. But basically, you have the Asian guitars, you have the made in Mexico guitars, and you have the American guitars. Pick the one you want in the color that it comes with the features that you want that we talked about, and I think you'll be good to go. You guys, it's been fun. I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot, but there's just a lot of models. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you in the next video.